Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get the show on the road. Welcome to the 2014 Spring Preview, the Academy for Lifelong Learning. My name is Allison Majora. I am the Program Administrator for the Academy for Lifelong Learning. And ALL is connected with Western Washington University, and that's whom I work for. The Extended Education Department supports ALL for a variety of things, and thank you, Karen. Through a variety of things, primarily program support, administration. I support the board of directors, and probably a handful of other miscellaneous minutia things that come up all the time. So something I wanted to ask you all by a show of hands is, who here has one of these? A tablet. A tablet or an iPad. What is it? Well, that's an even better question. What is this? So, it's a new version of a computer. New version, right. So the reason I bring this up is because eventually I'm curious to see whether or not anyone will actually bring one of these to the preview and beat everyone else in registration. So there's your test for the fall.
Can I do it from your smartphone?
You might be able to do it from your smartphone. The one bummer is that this system, our registration system, is not designed for mobile devices. So you can definitely access it, probably easier with an iPad, a large tablet like this, or of course your computer. But my guess is once you get on a smaller device, like your iPhone or an Android phone, you might have some challenges. So the reason I bring this up also is because registration, of course, will be available to you today if you have paper forms, if you'd like to use that method. And we'll have registration set up, as you may have seen already, in the back area over here, starting at 2 o'clock. If you need to leave before 2 o'clock and you want to leave your paper registration form, you can do so. There's an envelope on that table, and you're welcome to leave that there. But if you like to register online, which is always a preferred method for a lot of people, and also for us, because it makes the system very clean, and it registers you properly when we do it online. There's a lot less human error. But hey, we all have human error on our own when we're trying to register, and what do you do when that happens? You call us. And we're not the Ghostbusters, but we are a rowdy group. And this is the Extended Education team. We've grown quite a bit in the last couple of years. There's about 50 people that work for Extended Education. A lot of these people are also part of an intensive English program, Asia University program, but a lot of other folks in here also support you on a daily basis with registration, marketing materials, helping us put together the catalog and all of that. So a big round of applause, if you would, even though most of them are not here, to Extended Education. Thank you. Now just some regular logistics. The newsletter, if you haven't been a member of our newsletter or e-list, and you have email and you would like to receive one of these every month, it's just once a month, we use this to send out basic information about programs that are coming up, any announcements you might need to know. So if you'd like to join that list, there is a sign-up sheet right out front. You can add your name to that. If you're already on the list, you're already getting these emails, you do not need to add your name again. You can sign up not only out front, but also online when you get back home and register for all the classes you're excited about today, or send us a quick email right there. Membership, lots of people have ALL memberships. We also have half-year memberships that start in January. Both the half-year and full-year end in June. Lots of good privileges associated with being an ALL member. Discounts at Western, Village Books, and also, of course, on courses and excursions. And when you're a member, you also get to participate in the Academy for Lifelong Learning's board of directors decision-making process at our annual meeting and other various types of events like that. It's a program calendar that we post on the website for your convenience. It kind of gives you a quick visual snapshot of what we've got coming up for the upcoming term. We'll get that uploaded on the website. Right now we've got fall on there, and spring will be coming very shortly. Spring course locations, if any of you have been doing classes with us in the past, you're probably familiar with many of these places. Bellingham Cruise Terminal, which is where we are today. And the classroom that we use is just a sectioned off piece of this room back there, Garden Street Methodist Church, the Willows, and they've updated their policy on parking, giving us a nice sort of courtesy parking for our classes. So if you ever want to take advantage of that, it's free for you to use. You don't have to tip. Library presentation room. I know sometimes this is a sticky one because parking at Western is always a problem, even for people that work there. But we do have one class there this coming term, and it's on Saturdays. So hopefully that won't deter you, and it's going to be a good one. Right, Ron? Gateway Center. So the last one I want to touch on, this is a new facility that we discovered a couple months ago. It's a pretty cool spot. It's right behind Boomers on Samish Way. And it's got a real nice conference room that will accommodate up to about 70 people. And the best part about this place, it includes coffee and tea for free. So take a look at those classes that are going to be held there, and don't be afraid. There's also plenty of parking. It's a good spot. That's it for me today. Thank you for coming, and I'm going to invite Keats Garman, our volunteer support person on the board, to join us. Thanks.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Allison. Some of you probably know that over the last few years we've been going through a fairly major transition in ALL, and that has meant that we are relying more and more on the extended education staff, Allison and the other, not 50 people probably, but some of them. And we think that we're very lucky to have them in our court, on our side, helping us out. However, the heart of ALL is our volunteers. And it's our volunteers that put together the programs that you're going to be hearing about today, the courses, the excursions. And these all come about because of the work of two committees, the curriculum committee for the courses, the excursions committee for excursions. And so with that introduction about volunteerism, let me see amongst you how many of you are currently volunteering in some capacity in the community. How many? Wow, wow, yeah. So I don't have to talk to you about the benefits of volunteering. I don't have to do that. What I would like to do, though, is to point out some of the needs that we have in ALL currently for volunteers. But before I do that, I want to point out two very recent volunteers that we have who have stepped forward as a result of our last presentation. And one of them is Dan Hoffman. Dan is back here. Raise your hand, Dan. Dan has an IT background, and he has put together an amazing database of all of the courses and excursions that ALL has done ever. And we can search that database this way, forward, backward, sideways, and I think the curriculum committee is going to benefit greatly from looking at that database from time to time. And the other recent one is Steve Serum. Right here, he's our videographer today, and he is joining us as a volunteer to do a video of this presentation, not my presentation, but the whole thing, so that people who aren't able to attend today can see this as a video presentation. They can actually see the presenters, the faculty, the instructors firsthand, rather than just read about them. So those are two really great additions to our volunteer force. But we have others. We would like to find someone that would step forward and be our membership coordinator. That person would help with planning our what we call social events like this one, the annual meeting, perhaps inventing new social events. I was talking to Steve Serum over here earlier, and he was saying another organization like ours down in California has a group, some discussion groups that they've organized. who focus on a particular topic. Maybe they read something and they get together from time to time and discuss it. We haven't really tried to do that yet, but that's a possibility for a membership person to put that together. We also have had some turnover of the curriculum committee and the excursions committee, and we would greatly welcome new faces, new ideas, new members of those committees. And in a few minutes, Karen McGinnis will introduce the members of the curriculum committee who are here today. And if you're interested, you can step up and speak with any of them about your interest in joining the curriculum committee. Likewise, we have needs in the excursion committee. And if you're interested in helping figure out some interesting places to go and things to do in the area, please talk with Barb Evans here. You'll be hearing from her shortly about that committee and its activities. Board of Directors, there will be a spot open in a single spot so far as we know in April for a member of the Board of Directors. Anyone with who would like to work with a really great group of people on the board, please let me know or any of the other board members. Anybody interested in writing pieces for the newsletter? Interested in that kind of volunteer too? We would like to have someone who could do photography of some of our events. This event, but also some of the excursions, some of the field trips, some of the classes, and so forth. We're always looking for financial support, and maybe there's some corporations or groups out there who would like to be supportive of ALL, perhaps get an advertisement in the catalog or something as a result. Anyway, that's a possibility. And at the bottom here, always needing, imagine trying to set up this classroom today, this room, but smaller ones too, needing help with classroom setup, distributing the catalog, especially in outlying areas like Anacortes, Cedro Woolley, LaConner, Burlington, Oak Harbor. If you're from those areas and would like to help with distributing our catalog just twice a year in those areas, please let us know. So those are some of our needs. On the table out front here, you will find a sheet like this where you can sign up to be a volunteer. You can contact me directly. You'll find information in the catalog how to do that. So there are many ways that many methods you can use to let us know of your interest. So here are our current list of volunteers, and how about giving them a hand? Thanks.
Well, I'm glad to see such a large crowd too. A little humor. Crowd here today, and to hear about our excursions and classes. If you've looked in the catalog at the excursions, you can see we have planned 3 great excursions for spring term. And we'll get to those in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to recognize the members of the committee who worked so hard to put those together. And if you'd stand when I read your name, that would be great. Jane Clarkin, Yvonne Dean, Jean Gorton, and Keith and Marianne Phelps. And then we have 2 new members who have recently joined us, who are going to be a great addition to the committee. One is Mary Sadler, who I believe is out of town, and then Jeanette Young. So any of those people would be happy to hear your ideas for trips that you would like to see taken. So please contact any one of us. The other thing is, Keith's brought up the fact that we need volunteers. We always need volunteers. So if you or you know somebody who would like to help, please let me know or one of the other people on the committee. All right, now to the excursions. The first one is a trip to Everett to see a play, The Foreigner, which is a great comedy, should be a lot of fun. But before the play, we get to have lunch at Anthony's. So please consider signing up for this. We are very fortunate today to have Gene Keever, Dr. Gene Keever, a geologist, who is going to lead the trip to the Missoula flood area in eastern Washington, and I would like to have him come up and talk to us a little bit about it. He has a few slides to show us.
Okay, thank you, Barb. Well, I was going to start out and ask if anybody has ever heard of the Lake Missoula floods, but I guess everybody's heard about it here. This is great. Wow.
I've been to your classes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. And so you can, okay, there's all the information. I guess I get to advance. Yeah. Okay, and so what we're going to be doing, it's a bus trip over there, and we'll be staying in motels, etc. And we'll be visiting the Grand Coulee. So I think probably everybody has heard of the Grand Coulee, and it is a remarkable thing. Smithsonian rated the 10 most interesting natural features in North America, and we're in the top 10, so we felt pretty good about that. We now have an Ice Age Floods National Geologic Trail, and so if you're going to see one thing in the Channel Scabland, in the Missoula flood area, you want to see Grand Coulee. And the lower Grand Coulee and Dry Falls State Park is just an incredible place. If water were flowing over that, that would be the largest waterfall in the world. And so how did this thing get there? Where did the water go? And what did it do? That's what we're going to be looking at during that trip. And the whole story has to do with glaciers and ice and what the glaciers have done. And the last one, about 15,000 years ago, racing on through that Grand Coulee system, and it has to do with an ice dam up in northern Idaho, and behind that ice dam is Glacial Lake Missoula. Okay, and ice isn't a very good construction material, and it had a habit, and dozens of times it failed. And when it failed, you have 500 cubic miles of water racing across eastern Washington, where you see the darkened areas through the Columbia Gorge, into the Willamette Valley, and out the Pacific Ocean. So I think you'd find this story kind of interesting. I do. I've been doing it for close to 40 years now. And so mainly what we're going to be doing is looking at that Grand Coulee system, and there's been glaciers over there as well. And we'll be driving across some of the glaciated territory up there in the Waterville Plateau, and coming on down, going to Grand Coulee, and then we'll be spending a couple nights at Soap Lake. And so there's a lot of things to see, and again, it's a bus trip. We can do whatever you want. We can, the bus will stop and we'll arm wave and we'll look at stuff and answer questions, whatever. And if we have more time, we'll do something else, or energy, whatever it is. And so I recently finished a book on the Ice Age floods, on the trail of the Ice Age floods, and there's some good descriptions and so forth in there if you're interested. And I also brought a few, I should have brought more, I've got a few little brochures that talk about the Ice Age floods, and you can go online to the iceagefloodsinstitute.org or IAFI.org and learn more about the floods. And one of our members has something that's called Humongous Floods, so you can go on that and take a look at it. So, did I use up my time? Okay. Gee, I'm getting glared at over here, so.
Jean.
Thank I was gonna say. Okay, thanks a lot for doing that, Jane. So if that sounds like fun to you, then I suggest you sign up because we already have, the last time I looked, it was 15. So the bus holds 47, and 3 of those positions are taken by the leaders. So if it sounds good, get your sign up in. We're also lucky to have David Drummond, who will be the naturalist on the Bendovi Island trip that Yvonne Dean is leading. And David's going to say a few words about that trip as well.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. It's a real pleasure to be with colleagues and friends. I want to thank the committees in Western for all the dedicated work they've done. I like to wander back here because you're like family to me. You're friends. We've been doing this just for 14 years with you, and I figured out it's about 28 classes we've shared together. So pretty wonderful. And I just wanted to say that this is the #1 rated San Juan Island trip, because we've never gone there before, right? And who knows if we ever will again. And as I was driving here, there was a peregrine falcon, adult male, flying over my truck, guiding me to this very place. So I knew it was the right one to go to, so that we can go to this fascinating island that has quite a storied cultural history as well as a natural history. It's exciting geology there. How many of you have ever gone there? Do you know where it is? Not too many of you know where it is even. So Samish Island, right? And you go off of that to the northwest towards the south end of Lummi Island, and there's this Finger Island there, which has been private for a long time. But now that the San Juan Preservation Trust has it, we can access it. It's a lovely place at that time of year, May 5th, for wildflowers, for birds. We'll have the oceanography, the geology, and lots of good natural history to enjoy. So I'd be signing up for that one real quick. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. And I do hope to see some of you on at least one of the excursions. So Karen, it's yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see such a full crowd. Love it, love it. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here, for supporting ALL with your attendance, by submitting your evaluations to help the committee decide what to do, what not to do. We do look at all of those. We tried a couple new things last term, and you showed us that you liked the format. You gave evaluations that said you would be interested in doing it again. Those 2 new formats were having standalone courses, and we had 4 that dealt with the environment, and that was about the health of the Salish Sea. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. We had 4 really excellent experts who were able to talk about that, and we tied it all together so that the information got out there. The other was that we did a course for the first time that was really not in a classroom. It was out in the field. 3 5-hour field trips. And this was put on by the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association. We've asked them to come back and do some more courses with us because it was so well received. So we're going to get into today's program, but I want to give those as an example of how you guys have appreciated what we've done, but I want you to meet the curriculum committee that put that together and put together today's program. If you look at your catalog, we're listed on page 17. As I call your name, guys, stand up. We'll hold the applause till the end because everyone's going to want to thank you. Shirley Forsloff, I know she's not here today. Had a family emergency, but Shirley's been with us for a couple years now. Gail Garman. There's Gail. Beverly Jacobs. Carol Pemberton. Is she still outside? No, there she is. Good, good. Carol Rice. Mary Margaret Richter, and Linda Scott. Let's all thank them. You may have noticed something. All women. We lost 3 male members of our committee last year. for various reasons we won't go into. I mean, from death to relocating to, you know, things like that. So we didn't drive them off, believe me. Anyway, I'm not going to announce names yet, but I do have at least 2 new members of the curriculum committee, and they are males. But I'm still looking for more. Can always use a few good men. That's what they always say. Anyway, I think before we get into the program, probably need to talk about the rules. Let me introduce our timekeeper, Dale Rings. This is his 3rd year doing this. This guy doesn't have a life, obviously.
These are not subtle. I'll be here.
I always tease Dale because he used to be chairman of the board. And as you retire from the board, we find other duties for you to do. And they are important duties. To get everyone's presentation in, we need to hold people to the 3 minutes, obviously. We've had cases before when we've needed a hook for some people. But to the purpose that you're here, I assume, is to hear from our instructors, to learn about the courses. Of course, some of you may just be here for the good cookies. Yeah, that's okay too. We don't mind. What you're going to hear about now is we have 20 courses to offer. They will encompass 129 classroom hours. It's a total of 60 sessions, and as Allison pointed out, we're using 5 venues. We choose the venues carefully, and again, we look at your evaluations on what you like and what you don't like. But this year, I'd say we have a little extra that we're adding. We always like to have a little bit of focus, that's something different. But we have courses that have a little more than just classroom hours. We have, of course, we can't do a birding class without 4 hours of birding out there. Dave's going to do that class and obviously have a field trip, so you get to have a birding trip. We're going to have a tour of a vintage sailing vessel as part of a class. You'll hear about that later. We even have a dinner social with live music as part of a course. Optional, of course, but very important to it. And finally, and probably the most important, is there's an open house that everyone is invited to. We'll hear more about that, but there's an open house and it includes a free lunch. So what more could you want, huh? Okay. The first class, David's one of those that's got to leave early. He's got birds to go chase, I guess. Anyway, he's coming back with part 2 of Backyard Songbirds. Something like 9 species and 36 varieties. Nah, I got it wrong. Okay, come on, David.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Karen means well, and I love her dearly. All right, so again, during May, a fantastic time of the year for not only spring migrant birds, but also our resident birds, and that's what I hope to focus on this spring in part 2, is that all those birds that you really weren't too aware of, perhaps, that actually live in a place you call home first. Now, you might call them trespassers, but it depends on your point of view. And so these birds that are primarily grain-eating, granivores, right? Groups such as the titmice, right, that build those beautiful pendulum nests in your yards. Things like nuthatches, woodpeckers, and you'll see a few others there. So yeah, I've kind of manipulated this. I'll look at least 10 families, about 38 species is what I'm looking at, but there might be some others. Now, as you recall last time in part 1, I don't know if you were there or not, but we don't put the blinders on when there's other exciting birds to look at. To stay on focus, we'll take those in as well. But the idea is to meet here in 3 sessions, to actually take our time. If you were on the first one, we'll have more time this time because we're covering less total species, to actually have more discussion about them, because it was a bit of a push with all the neotropicals to get it in. But lots of good visuals. We had auditory, so we were learning not only by sight and sound, their field ID, but that's just a door, right? It gets you into their realm. So now we can learn more about actually the biology and ecology. And my fascination is their behavioral ecology. Each one of you, like every bird you've ever seen as an individual, you have unique stories. And you actually can get to know these feathered friends of ours that well out in our yards and beyond. So if you'd like to finally take, in the first time in your life, or to repeat it, a thorough and in-depth investigation to these kindred friends of ours, literally our neighbors, and I invite you to this class. Looking forward to a very exciting field trip as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And you needn't have taken the first class, right? To pick up here?
Yeah.
You had to or
No,
did
no,
not?
no, not at all. No, no, you're talking to me. Yeah,
No, just in case people think you know there was background knowledge that was necessary. Yeah, right. Next, this is out of order also because Janet needs to leave, but we have Janet Oakley who is going to present, give us a brief preview of her course that she's going to talk about on the traffic on Bellingham Bay. Bet you didn't know there was traffic jam out there.
There was, and I'll follow what David did. It's kind of cool to have your microphone with you. I'm a historian writer here in Bellingham, Washington, and I have a confession to make. I'm a landlubber. I've only been out on tall ships twice, 3 times in my life, once on Chesapeake Bay in college, and twice with the Zodiac with high schoolers from Seaholm High School. But I have fallen in love with the maritime history of Bellingham Bay through the Anne Perry, the ship that brought the bricks for the old courthouse, which is now fully restored. We're very excited about that. So what we're going to do in the class, we're going to talk about the event that brought an amazing number of ships to Bellingham Bay in 1858. And it started first with the discovery of gold up in Canada on the Fraser River, and they just started going crazy. So I'm talking about the kind of the impact of San Francisco and then all these ships that came up here. We have always heard stories from the pioneers, reporting probably about 50 years later, about all these ships that showed up and saying, oh, they dropped off 300 people. Well, through shipping intelligence out of the Alta California, I found out that yes, there were that many being dropped out. Right out here, we had no real proper wharf except the wharf at the coal mine. And so Anne Perry was the name of my ship that I fall in love with. They spelled her name wrong for 150 years. And I found out she's a very famous ship. So what we're going to do in this is we're going to talk about the impact. Some very dramatic things happened, like they almost had complete one of the worst maritime disasters coming up here. They're all coming to Bellingham Bay, and part of it is how they didn't even name the place. They didn't say Seaholm and Watcom until about May of 1858, but I found wonderful reporters saying. So we're going to talk about this in a classroom, and then that's April 3rd. And the following week, we are supposed to be out here on the Zodiac. And that ship was built in the 1920s. It's a wonderful thing. And Chris Wallace, who is first mate, she's a gal, she's first mate on the Zodiac. She's going to give us a dockside tour. Now, the thing that's a little tricky with this, we'll have to be flexible because they don't know the date when the Coast Guard says you got to come into Seattle and be checked out. But they'll have a firmer date probably within the hopefully next 3 weeks, so we can definitely do it the week of the 10th. And so that's that.
Thank you. Is that the ship that we could see out here today? It's covered in plastic, I noticed. It's a beautiful ship, so it will be a special treat as part of the course. Now we'll get back in order of in the catalog. I have to start this by saying I met Milt Krieger at a jazz concert out in Sudden Valley. Besides all my work with ALL, I've been literally helping build the Sudden Valley Library. One of the things we did to raise money was to put on a jazz concert. We had a series of 4 concerts every year, so we could bring in some money to pay for the supplies. Milt, I meet at one of the concerts at the back. I'm the wine and beer seller, So he's back there. But I noticed this guy just kind of getting in the groove, you know, and really enjoying it. So when I got a chance to get away from the wine booth a bit, I was kind of with it too. And so we're chatting around. And then I find out he's the person that Dale Rings has been trying to get me in touch with to work up a class for ALL. So this has been several years in the making, and Milt's ready now to share his knowledge from the area and globally about jazz. Milt Krieger.
Yes, it has been a bit of a road, and I'm glad it's led this way. Thank you for being here. You're going to have to live with my voice, which will be better in a couple of weeks. The course basically is designed to pull together the local and the global jazz environments. Jazz is about a century old. From my point of view, it's about as creative as an original and as original a part of our culture and our society in this country as anything, and the way it's spread the last century everywhere is part of what the course is about. I'm not a jazz musician, I'm not a musician at all, so I'm not going to intimidate anybody from the technical or musicological standpoint. It's a course designed for appreciation and whatever goes beyond that for, I think, rookies and veterans alike. Experts, I don't know. If you're there as an expert, you're going to be teaching, not there as a student, I suspect. We have in Bellingham a very lively jazz environment. If you go to Entertainment News Northwest, just look at the offerings in the middle of that calendar this month, and pages 29 to 31, you'll see what I'm talking about. Live jazz has been all around us for actually a century. Ragtimes were played at the opening of the Leopold Hotel in 1913. So that's just a little bit of a sense of where this course tries to take us, knitting together all that. If you're wondering about Downton Abbey, anybody watching it? And where the character of Jack Ross comes from. It'll be there. If you're wondering what led Cora to invite his lordship to come to bed and dream ragtime with me 2 weeks ago, we'll touch that. If you're wondering how Benny Goodman got to Carnegie Hall concert in 1938, yes. Esperanza Spalding from Portland accompanied President Obama to the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony in 2009. She was on the Oscar program in 2012. So from the very start of the music to right today. We'll do a little here and a little there. I've put together about 50 recordings covering from Scott Joplin to Esperanza Spalding. I've taken about 75 slides. This is what the book looks like. It's not assigned, but I've taken about 75 slides, a half of them from here, a half of them from the global environment. There'll be some readings, which are entirely optional, but if anybody wants to go a little further to prepare and then go further than the course itself, it can be done. And there's one live jazz presentation the evening of 6th of March with the Jerry Fenwick Quintet at Skylarks, again optional. We're taking the cover charge off that because Dave Kine, the trombonist, is going to be playing in New York City that night, not in Bellingham. So we touch a little here, a little there. Thank you for listening to the pitch. We're glad to have you catch it and see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks.
And Milt, am I correct? People, even if they don't attend the course, they could sign up for the optional jazz night at Skylarks.
I'd like to have a count on that so the House knows how many to expect. Yes.
Yeah, so if there's something preventing you from the course and you'd just like to join us for dinner and meeting the band and live music at Skylarks, March 6th. So,
Not a closed party.
Not a closed party at all. Thank you for that. Well, now we have the youngest member of our faculty. It's pretty easy. You could be 50, 60 and be the youngest member of our... That's probably an insult, wasn't it, to say you were the youngest, obviously. Well, that's okay. That's quite all right. She says she's known for getting in trouble, on campus. It's like, that's okay. I'm known for getting in trouble here at ALL. Still getting in trouble. Anyway, I'm sure a lot of you have wondered, what is Acadia? And Christina's gonna tell us about that and use a play to help us identify and get to know the Acadian people. Come on, Christina.
In trouble in a good way. I promise. And I've actually forgotten what my slides are, so I guess I have to advance it for a sec. Okay, there we go. So I am the crazy Canadian who wants to bring you home with me. I'll get to that in a moment. But the questions right now are, what determine your identity? What are your prime identity markers? Is it where you're from? Is it the language that you speak? Is it what you find when you fill out Ancestry.com? Is it your religious affiliation, your political affiliation, your social beliefs? These are the questions that are at the foundation of my research, and especially home in New Brunswick, Canada. That's why I say I want to bring you home with me. Now, Acadia is not politically recognized. It is an imaginary concept, according to many. Generally speaking, we would say that it is the area occupied by the native French speakers of the Maritime provinces east of Quebec. Primarily in New Brunswick, right up here, which holds about 230,000 native French speakers. And that is the center of my research in New Brunswick. So, let's have a picnic. But before we do, I'll show you where the picnic takes place. All along the coast, the north and the east of New Brunswick. Now, I said we're going to have a picnic. First day of our picnic, we're going to talk about Acadia, what it is, where it is, a little bit of history, and you'll learn that actually part of New Brunswick, up here on the screen, is divided into three, and it's a very dysfunctional family. 3 regions, they love each other, they hate each other, they bicker, they have fun. We're Acadian, you're not. You speak a better language than I do. No, I speak a much better language than you do. Oh, you've got English in your French? You're not one of us. Very dysfunctional, very fun. And so, we're going to discuss this through a play. The play is called Le Pique-Nique, the picnic. This play was written in 1982, has very few characters. It is 1 act. And each character represents a very important part, socially or historically, in Acadia. There is the bishop, who represents the Catholic representation. There is the Native American or the First Nations. There is the 3 regions who represent the Greek-style chorus. Again, a very dysfunctional family. So we are going to have some fun. I'm going to translate it for you. Don't worry, I won't ask you to learn French between now and March 5th. We're going to have some fun learning what identity means, and hopefully so that you can question what your identity is. Thank you.
Thank you. Doesn't that sound fun? It's interesting. I told Christina I went to the play when it was advertised, and we put it in the newsletter that it was coming up, and we wanted to encourage people. And it was a really awful, cold, windy night. And finding it on campus and everything, and I get there. One thing I didn't know, it's like you got to ask questions. It was in French. Oh my God. But I stayed. It was good. You could tell by the posturing, and it was clear. One person spoke English. That was the one person I could understand. But I'm looking forward to it. I think you all will enjoy it too. Next is a new instructor for us. I would call him an ethnomusicologist. And he's new to Bellingham, but has taught in this subject. And I'm excited to hear him tell us more about his class called What in the World is Music? Bell Young.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm new. Oops. I've been here for about a little over a year. I've taught at the University of Pittsburgh for 31 years. And now retired to this very beautiful part of the country, and particularly in Bellingham. I really come to love this city very, very much. And now I get to know some Bellinghamers. The title of my course intends to capture two sides of the content. One is to play for you and to share with you some interesting music from many different parts of the world. Music is found everywhere. It's universal, but most of them sound very different from one another. So I think it's good for us to, from time to time, listen to some strange music. I think it's good for our ears and good for our minds. It's sort of like meeting new people from other parts of the world that are different from ourselves. It's really good for us. And so I'll be showing images of music making and playing some samples of the music. Now, be warned that some music sounds strange, as I've already said that, and some may sound unpleasant, and some may not even sound like music to you. But I can assure you that some people in some parts of the world consider that as great music. It's not, I have some Chinese friends who said that they thought Wagnerian sopranos are unfit for one's ears, particularly early in the morning. So don't be surprised that some great music from some other parts of the world that you may not like. But then also there are some very familiar sounds from other parts of the world, and we'll listen to them also. The second aspect of my course, oops, I don't want to show this yet, is to ask questions. It's more the intellectual side of my course. I will explore what is music, or what is the use of music, what does music mean to us, what does it mean by good music, and what does it mean by bad music, and why do we sometimes say that it's not music at all, it's just noise. So having explored and listened to music from different parts of the world, these questions will give us new meanings to us. So I hope it's going to be fun, but it's also going to be stimulating to our mind. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sounds good. And that'll be at the new Gateway Center location. So I think and from what I've heard, it'll have some nice sound to hear the music in. Next, we have invited back our classics professor. When Andrew first contacted me about doing a class here, although he'd done ALL type classes back in the Pittsburgh area and Carnegie Mellon, when he contacted me here, I said, I'm not sure people here want to read books. We just like to be entertained. You guys know what I mean. But I am very pleased to say that after just finishing a second course, no complaints, no problems with buying the book. We just finished the Iliad, and everyone who was in the class, I'm sure, will agree with me that it was a very stimulating experience, and we're looking forward to Phase 2 of Homer's stuff. Let's go to the Odyssey. Andrew?
Yes, as Karen just indicated, for the last 6 weeks, some of you have been fighting the Trojan War along with me and Achilles by reading Homer's great epic, the Iliad. This coming term, whether or not you've just slugged it out on the plains of Troy, you'll have the opportunity to hitch a ride home from the war with one of its most notable veterans by reading Homer's second great epic, the Odyssey. Odysseus, who of course is the hero of that poem, after whom the poem is named, has been away. When he gets home, he's been away for 20 years. That's 10 years at Troy fighting and 10 years trying to get home. The various things happen on his journey, which is how the word Odyssey has come to mean, just in English with a lowercase o, it's a long series of adventures. The Odyssey is in part, or it contains definitely, an adventure story in which Odysseus and his men encounter a one-eyed man-eating giant, and they confront the seductive sirens whose enchanting songs lure passing sailors into shipwreck. So it has that adventure quality, but it's also a love story in which Odysseus feels such longing to be reunited with Penelope, his wife that he hasn't seen for 20 years, that he rejects repeated offers by a beautiful goddess to make him immortal and become her husband. And he also politely sidesteps the possibility of marrying a beautiful young princess whose fabulously wealthy father is eager for the match as well. He passes up those opportunities in order to reunite with Penelope, who herself, meanwhile, has been evading urgent offers by various wealthy young aristocrats who want to marry her. But there's also a political dimension to the poem, because in Odysseus's absence for 20 years, and he's king, this Ithacan society has fallen into considerable disarray and disorder, and that's one of the problems that Odysseus will have to face when he gets home. Another dimension that I'm particularly interested in, I believe that one of the central concerns of the poem is what we, using Greek words, would call psychotherapy. That is to say, I think a central concern of the poem is the various problems that can be posed for human beings by traumatic experiences that they go through, and the various solutions to those problems, or semi-solutions or non-solutions that human beings resort to as a way of coping with their mental distress. So in any case, it's a multifarious poem, and I hope some of you will show up to enjoy it with me. Thank you.
As you can tell, you can read the books and find it rather dry, but when Andrew gets up in front of the classroom and interprets it to you, it takes on a whole different meaning, much more like a soap opera. I hope that was a compliment. We're having an American history class that we're bringing back. We did this about 5 years ago, filled the classes, so we wanted to bring Richard Millett back to tell you what you missed in the 11th grade. I think I missed more than this, but at least we're going to learn about this. Richard? Oh, there you are. You're too close.
This is the wrong slide, okay? We're not dealing with the Constitution. Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos. Los españoles estaban muy activos durante casi 100 años antes de que llegaran los ingleses al sitio que luego ocupó nuestro país. Entonces, ¿por qué no hablamos español hoy?
Good question.
Bonjour, bienvenue à tous. Les Français sont très occupés pour un long temps avant que les Anglais sont arrivés ici dans notre pays. Pourquoi nous ne parlons pas en français aujourd'hui? Guten Mittag, willkommen alle. De Nederland is opgestart, een major arbeidsmarkt, alvorens het aankomst van Engels. Waarvoor we spreken niet Nederlandse. The Spanish were active for 100 years before the arrival of the English. Why aren't we speaking Spanish today? They were active on the East Coast, the South, and the West Coast. The French were active in North America for half a century before the arrival of the English. Except for a few quirks of fate, we could well be speaking French today. And the Dutch. There's still a few Dutch speakers in London. Unfortunately, I couldn't find them, so I had to do the Dutch translation myself. And the Dutch started a trade center on the East Coast, which is still going 400 years later. We could well be speaking Dutch today as well. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at why the Europeans were wrong in thinking that the Americas were a new world. Actually, the Americas were a very old world. We'll take a look at some myths in our history. Plymouth Rock. Anybody ever been there? It was planted. And why July 4 is not Independence Day. Technology has brought a lot of new historical materials available to us via the internet. When we were all in college, if you wanted primary source material, you had to go to the State Museum or the State Historical Society, and maybe they let you look at some original documents. Now a lot of those have been downloaded and you can read them online, which results in issues of revisionism. Do we rewrite the textbooks? Negationism. Oh, the Armenian genocide never took place, nor did the Holocaust. And cultural relativism, judging other people's histories or cultures on the basis of our own. So I do come in costume from time to time. Hope to see you there.
He does come in costume to his courses. I asked him today when I saw him where his outfit was. He said it's getting a little tight, but he'll find a way to squeeze into it for the course. We know how that goes. Thank you, Richard. Next, a hot topic that we all hear about all the time and are concerned about, world energy systems. Sandy Lawrence is going to tell us about his 4-session course. Thank you.
Richard Millett reminds me of the old line that if you speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. If you speak 2 languages, you're bilingual. If you speak 1, you're an American. So my course will be in English, and I'm going to talk about energy systems and climate change. This is something that I got interested in really back when I was a teenager. I had the great good fortune when I was 18, 19, a freshman and sophomore undergraduate, to take a couple of interdisciplinary courses from Paul Ehrlich, author of The Population Bomb, and John Holdren, who was finishing up his last 2 years of PhD at the time. He's currently a senior advisor to President Obama on energy and technology issues. At the same time, concurrently, I succumbed to the family curse. I turned pre-med. My father was a doctor, his father was a doctor. Our son is now in medical school. And so I had a whole career in medicine. But the first half of it down in California, I was academic and I was teaching, and I would sneak in an occasional topic for or lecture for the residents, and sometimes in the community I would give a talk on, say, nuclear power and nuclear weapons, and some other topics related to energy that I thought had issues of public health incorporated. Then I retired 3 years ago, and I went back to my first love of energy, and I've been doing lots of study in that area, and I've been doing occasional talks, usually in high school science classes, occasionally in the community, and one time at Western previously. So the very first session is going to be devoted entirely to petroleum and the theory of peak oil, and a lot of concepts related to understanding energy systems. And the very last session of the 4 is going to be exclusively dealing with climate change. We'll incorporate a lot of the data from the most recent publication by the IPCC from back in October of last year, and also some more recent data actually just in the journals in the last couple of months as well. Now, in between, we have a whole variety of possibilities of things that we can talk about. And I think what I may do is have people in the course help decide which other topics we will deal with. I have an entire talk on nuclear power, which is very interesting right now because there's some significant controversy within the environmental community, as you may know. There are people like James Hansen, who's probably the best-known climatologist in the country, who are fervently in favor of nuclear power, and then others like Amory Lovins from the Rocky Mountain Institute who remain opposed to it. So I think that would be an interesting topic. Another one would be coal. That's very topical for us because we have not only the history of coal in this town, but have also, of course, the Gateway Pacific Terminal to discuss. And then I have discussions also of wind photovoltaic, of geothermal, and I'm working on one on biofuels. So it's not clear what those 2 middle sessions will be, but I think they'll be interesting as well. I think I'll stop there. Thanks.
As you can see, Sandy has a lot of wealth of information on the topic, and he's going to allow the participants in the course to select the path to take. Next is one of my favorite ladies in the whole world. She spends half her year in India and the other half here with us. Can you imagine you the other side of the world or here in Bellingham? They're both beautiful places, and she's going to share that country. And she's just back from there. Becky Pillai. And she dressed for the occasion.
Namaste.
Namaste.
It will not have escaped your notice that I have titled the class in a kind of playful way. Of course, it's a spin-off on that very popular film that was released a year or so ago. But there's a reason why I titled it that way, and I'm going to explain to you why, and that'll give you an insight as to where I'm going in this class. This actually will be the 6th class on India that I have offered with ALL. I thought with my last class, about a year or so ago, when I taught a one-session class on the Great Indian Epic Ramayana, and then escorted the class down to Seattle to the Fifth Avenue Theater to see a production of it, I thought at that time, well, all right, I've said everything that I have to offer, so let others take up the torch if they want. But then last year I got a call from the curriculum committee inviting me to offer another course proposal on India. And at that time I learned one of the great lessons of life. Flattery will get you everywhere. So here I am again. Now, the reason I titled this class with a little touch of whimsy is because unlike the other classes that I have taught for ALL, this time I'm going to be drawing upon my own personal experience, all of my adult life in India, and sharing with you some of those experiences as they relate and illustrate some of the issues and components of Indian culture that I'm going to be describing. So this class is focused entirely on contemporary India, and I have thought through what are the questions I've been asked all of my adult life, not just as an instructor, but in my life, when people learn that I have any connection to India. What are the questions people most often have asked me? And so that's how I have built this class. I'm going to be building it around elements of contemporary Indian society that foreigners and visitors find the most challenging, confounding, offensive. So anyway, it'll be issues related to caste, women's issues, very interesting to me, marriage and the family. Do they still do arranged marriages? How does that work? All of those kinds of very complex and controversial to us issues I will be dealing with. I also have some very excellent, recently done documentaries on contemporary Indian society that I will be sharing certain parts of. So if you're interested in any of those, the bullock cart leaves on April 1st, and you're welcome. So thank you.
You cannot escape Dale rings. You can try. Next we have one of our movie mavens back to help us understand the movies. And this time he's going to focus on music in the movies. Ron Miller, come join us.
I have some very good news for everybody. At no time during these 4 courses will I attempt to sing. Unless, of course, the audience becomes unruly and we need to clear the room. My thesis for this course is that there has always been a strong presence of music in movies. And some of you may be thinking, well, wait a minute. For the first 25 years, there was no sound in movies, but there was always music. Even in the smallest towns, there were a piano player or an organist. And for the larger cities, they had orchestral scores that were composed in advance by composers. I'm going to give you some examples of those. In fact, produce 4 American standard pop songs that came from silent movies. I'm going to talk about the beginnings of talkies and how important music was to the success of those, because for years, people had heard about these great singers on Broadway and in recordings, but they had never seen them actually perform any of their music. So there was a rush to get all these people into the movies. And in fact, radio networks had only begun in like 1925, 26. So it was really a completely different kind of world for music, and it came rushing into the movies. I'm going to discuss the early crooners. I'm going to discuss the singing cowboys and a lot of the trends that came out of movies. Now, in one of the episodes of this class, we're going to discuss the American movie musical, which is an art form that really was created in America out of various parts of stage performances around the world. But the American movie musical became a standard, and we're going to go from the very beginnings, from the Broadway melody of 1929, all the way up through Les Miserables and some of the films of today that use music as musicals. We're going to discuss also the great number of singers and musicians who became movie stars, or who tried to and never quite made it as movie stars. And we've got some wonderful examples of both. And you may wonder, why did that person fail? And yet somebody like Bing Crosby, who had big ears, and a kind of a fat gut, well, how did he ever make it as a star? Well, you'll discover when you see the early films that some of these people made, you'll see why they became movie stars or why they didn't. And then we're finally going to discuss what I consider the decline and fall of the best song category in the Academy Awards. Now, I don't know if you noticed any of the songs that were nominated this year, but I don't think I've ever heard any of them before, and I doubt if I'll ever hear any of them again. But back in the 1930s, you had Cole Porter, Irving Berlin, and the Gershwins writing songs and competing with each other for the Oscar. And we're going to see a lot of these great performances on screen. Thank you very much. Hope you sign up.
Wow. You'll notice that this is the one class that's being held at Western. It's in the library presentation room. It's right next to the library. Bus doesn't run on Saturday, though, right? I was going to say by the bus stop. Allison?
I think there is one.
The bus run? It's right by the bus stop and the library. And I'm assuming that I don't see any problem why people can't bring popcorn, do you?
Bring it.
Saturday matinee. We use this room because it has a huge screen. It has a nice projection system. It really is a movie experience. It's not like looking at something in a big room like this. So, no, you will enjoy it. This is the person who, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. That was one of the first people I was going to ask today. Satpal Sidhu. At the last minute today, could not come. He is presenting an interesting course on the Sikh religion, and he's the one who has the open house that he's invited us to. So at the last minute, I am calling on the course producer to give us a preview, and that is Bev Jacobs.
Welcome everybody. This is an opportunity to have free Indian food, and that will be presented to anybody. You don't have to take the class. Anyway, Satel told me, Sapal Sidhu is his name. I know him through the Watkin College Foundation, and here is his comment. The Sikh religion is the 5th largest organized and the youngest religion of the world with 20+ million followers. It is little over 500 years old. Sikhism is very pragmatic and open religion which shuns rituals and general limitations on what we'll find with the Islam and Hindu religion. Followers of Sikh religion are residing in over 70 countries. The word Sikh means student or discipline, and the word guru means teacher. Sikhs had 10 gurus over 250 years, starting in 1469. The holy book, called Guru Granth, was given the status of living guru teacher by the 10th guru in 1708. Watkin County had first Sikh residents in 1906 and has a unique history connected to the Northwest United States. The class will cover fundamentals of Sikhism, its history in India, US, Canada, and UK, and other parts of the world. This course offers very fascinating contents and lots to learn about the people wearing turbans and long beards. I welcome all of you to sign up. I met, he's a very articulate man, was a Fulbright scholar and was head of Bellingham Technical College for several years. And what he is offering, and I have taken my grandchildren to this experience, on April 26th, from 10 to 12, you celebrate the Sikh gathering there off of Pole. I go up Meridian, then turn on right on Pole Road, and their Sikh temple is there. And they have it's from 10 to 2, and your children will have an opportunity to taste different kinds of Indian food. It's all free, so I welcome you to come if you can't take the class. Thank you very much.
Thanks for filling in, Beverly. This information is in your catalog, too, so the address and the date and time for the open house. Next, this guy brings us the interesting, I almost said weird, but I don't want to give words like that. But we have David Tucker back to present us another one of his way out courses. This one's Out of the Shadows, Cosmic Discoveries. David?
Give me a fair chance, okay? Okay, here we go. I can tell you this, I need to sign up for Richard's class because I didn't understand a thing he said, even the English part of it. All right, so help me out here a little bit, folks. We're going to study the cosmos. So look around this room, pick an object, look at all the colors, the shapes, the sizes. How is it that we can see them? What has to happen for us to see these objects? And I'm not talking about your eyes. What about the material makes it so we can see it? There are only two. There are only two processes that go on there that make it so we can see them. What's one of them? Anybody? Something to do with the light. Okay, so all matter has to either, in order for us to see it, all matter has to either be able to glow, to give off light, like those lights up here, and the sun that's coming in, or it has to be able to process the light. Take that light in, absorb it, and send it back out. We call that reflection. Okay, and so it's one of those two. All of matter we have does that. Take a look at the picture here. I wish this was a little darker room so you could see this picture. That's us. That's a picture of us. That's the Milky Way galaxy. That picture's been taken by a combination of a whole bunch of pictures. We're out here in the clean part of the galaxy, but that's us. Now that galaxy has 100 billion stars in it, just like our sun. And those 100 billion stars probably, now we're discovering, each of those stars has probably 10 some planets going around it. So that's more matter. And all of that matter can either give off light, like the stars, or reflect it so we can see it. Here's the problem, and this is what the course will focus on. That is only 5% of all the matter in the observable universe right now. Of all that matter, only 5% of the matter does this. In other words, all of the rest of the matter is a kind of matter that does not give off light, does not allow us to see it, and we call that dark matter, something totally different than we can even imagine. That's what the course is about. So my question to you is, If astronomers and cosmologists know it's out there, how do we know? How do they know it's out there? There are ways. So come and visit me. Thank you.
Dark matter, huh? Got me thinking. We always like to find someone in the community to bring us history of our local area. We seem to study the United States a lot. And one of the well-known local historians and writer of books on this area is Wes Ganaway. So he's going to have a class on history of Bellingham and Whatcom County. Wes?
Hello. You may have seen me if you've been to a Whatcom County Historical Society meeting. I am the president of that organization at this point in time. I'll give you an example. We talk about the Hindus and why they aren't here or weren't here for a long time. And I'll be talking about that, what happened. There are other people who have given talks about it. Another thing I'll talk about is why did anybody show up here? I mean, what was here? Why did they come? Why did they stay? I'll be talking about why there were no Chinese killed in the coal mines. Yeah, look at that. It's 2 sessions, 2 2-hour sessions. The first session will be on the natives that came here and settled. The second part of that will be on the early explorers. Then we'll talk about the early settlers that came, why they stayed, and then we'll finish up with a description of the more recent activities here, the growth of the population here into a major city, and all of the industries and things like that. A bunch of other questions, why. The coal mine thing is so interesting. I heard a conversation the other day about all the Chinese that are buried in the coal mines here. We'll talk about why that didn't happen. What prompted people to come and why they all moved west. We'll talk about the migration. We'll talk about immigration and things like that. So if you want to know anything about the local history, I'll be giving the courses. There's, for new people, I know there's people that have lived here all their life and we'll refresh their memory about the history. And then new people coming in, maybe they'll want to know a little bit about the local history here. And we'll get that all straightened out. There's always something new to learn. And I've been learning for about 35 years here. I'm not a native. I grew up in, did people know where Darrington is? Okay, I grew up in that environment, and then I lived in Ballard. Yeah. So I'm going to push this class, and if we have time, then we'll maybe do something with the old courthouse building. So I think you'll all enjoy that too. Thank you.
Wes has lots of great old photos. I'm assuming you will be sharing those with people too. Yes. I remember a previous class and there's some great ones. Well, here we are with the latest technology, guys. This is a YouTube from Professor Kazab. He is in New Mexico, I believe, right now. This will be his 3rd class with us, and this one is on self-esteem and why it's so important, or is it?
Hi everyone, sorry I couldn't make it to the spring preview this year, but I am currently in Austin, Texas, and hopefully enjoying some barbecue right now. I wanted to give you a little bit of a preview, I guess, of the class and tell you what we'll be doing because I've really enjoyed these classes and doing them with ALL in the past. So this is going to be a class on self-esteem. What is it? And try to understand a way to define self-esteem, I guess, and then more importantly look at where it comes from and why is it really such a big deal, or at least why do we think it's such a big deal. We've seen generations grow up within a culture that really encourages and emphasizes self-esteem and tries to find ways to really increase self-esteem. And we all thought this was a great idea. Everyone should feel good about themselves. And now we're finding through a lot of research that, whoops, maybe this was a bad idea. My classes tend to be a bit focused on research. We try to use what social psychology research has to say about everyday situations. And we're finding out now that things like self-esteem are perhaps not as important as we thought, or at least the way we've thought about self-esteem. Maybe we've been thinking about it in the wrong way, in terms of high versus low self-esteem is perhaps the wrong way to go. So what we'll do is we'll kind of explore where it comes from, what sort of evolutionary purposes it might serve, what are the more practical purposes it serves now. And it'll be fun. I've really enjoyed these classes, like I said, and I've had students come back for multiple classes, so maybe something's going right. And I promise in those classes I will actually be there in person and not be talking to a device of some sort. So hopefully if you're interested, you'll sign up and we'll chat more about it. So thanks very much.
This was the first professor who offered to send us his YouTube interview while out of town. So it challenged the ALL staff. Thank you, Allison and Dan, for making it work. It was cool. Now, since we're on psychology, let's talk about the clutter of things. Unfortunately, Carolyn Kohnlein is not able to be here today. She has a scheduling conflict. She's teaching another class. So again, I'm going to call on the course producer, and this time it's Carol Pemberton. Thank you, Carol.
Carolyn asked me to please apologize that she couldn't be here. She tried to change things, but it just didn't work out. She did give me something to read, though, to describe her class to you. She's offering a one-session class on People and Their Things, a psychological perspective on clutter. She's a longtime Bellinghamster, and she has an active psychology class or business in Bellingham. People's relationships with their objects in their lives is varied and personal, influenced by life experiences, brain chemistry, ethnic heritage, and the surrounding mainstream culture. Periodically, most of us are faced with the sometimes overwhelming task of paring down, deciding what to keep and what to let go. To do so makes life more manageable and increases space and energy for the present. This introductory workshop will give you a fresh perspective on the dilemma of clutter, by exploring your unique relationship with your things, allowing the task of weeding out to be both more possible and more meaningful. We hope that you will attend this class. It should be very interesting.
Yeah, I figure clutter is other people's things. My things are treasures. But I love that picture. We always have to get back. We got to clean up our clutter, but we also have to exercise. What kind of a world is this? Elaine Kress is going to tell us about why exercise works magic. Come on, Elaine.
Hi, thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you all for being here. I'm glad I'm here because I was in South Carolina when that storm was coming, and so I changed my reservations to Monday. Otherwise, I was thinking I'd have to call up and say I didn't get out of South Carolina. So I'm glad I'm here. How many of you really identify with and like the title of I'm retired? Does that work for anybody? Okay, oh, amazing. Okay, great. Well, for me, I kind of don't feel retired because I'm not totally retired. And I heard yesterday someone use the word refirement. And I think that a lot of us are not ready to hang up our shoes yet, and we are ready to go a few more miles and exercise. And the magic of exercise is really what keeps you fit and with enough physical reserve to do what is got the fire in your belly to do. And so work physiology really started out in our labor society. And we had to understand how fit we needed to be to do the labor and when to take a rest break. But then, as our society engineered physical activity out of all of our daily life, we don't even have to do anything but touch a button to move the seat forward in the car. So we started to learn what happens with a sedentary lifestyle, which is this accumulation of chronic conditions. And those are just conditions with the passage of time. Aging is also the passage of time, but you don't have to have the chronic conditions because of the passage of time. And so if exercise was a pill, it'd be the most widely prescribed medicine. If exercise was a pill, it would be prescribed with chronic conditions as well as for prevention. If exercise was a pill, the list of positive effects would be much longer than the side effects that are shown in the medicines that are in the small print, right? The side effects are good side effects with exercise. All of a sudden it's got louder. Yeah, I guess so. If exercise was a pill, the insurance companies would universally pay for it, and we're starting to get a few more now. So in 1996 and in 2010, the Surgeon General put out the broad strokes of why we should exercise. But I'm going to go beyond that, and there was a good article published in Scientific America that said, we have learned so much more in the science of exercise about how the immune system is helped. It reduces the risk of cancer, and it improves brain health. When I ask students how many would rather be demented or in a wheelchair, most people take the wheelchair, right? So all of these, and even the genome is turned on and turned off with exercise. So we're going to talk about more of the cutting edge aspects, but it will not be overly scientific. So I hope you'll join me in May for this course. Thank you.
Now I want to introduce Stan Clausen, who will be doing, I think, his last class with us was on Westerns on the radio. He is our radio man, and this is going to be on Radio Detectives, and I bet most of us in the room will remember these.
That's always been one of the big problems, of course, is that as time goes by, we get older. That's one problem. The other problem is that the younger people that are coming behind us have not, many of them now, I would say almost 50%, probably have not experienced what it was like when radio did everything. Radio gave you your news. Radio gave you almost all your entertainment, except if you could sneak off to the movie theater. And, you know, a lot of times my mother didn't want me to do that because there was Carol Lombard, things like that. Radio got us through World War II. But a lot of people here, of course, have no idea how that might have been. So what I'm doing in this class, this is the third class in radio history that I presented here for ALL. I started out with doing a lecture class that was one of those long ones, you know, where you get six sessions. And then last time I did just Westerns that can't come out of the radio heritage and that were only, and many of them only on radio, but then a lot of them were then also on television later, such as Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke actually started out as a very, very good radio program, and most of the people that were on that radio program were far better actors than the ones you see on the Gunsmoke TV version. So you have that problem. The other thing was that radio also could almost be found almost anywhere in the globe in those days, and the whole thing only lasted something like 25, 30 years. And yet, so when they say radio died, that means basically that the various advertising agencies that ran most of the programming, and still do in television, as soon as those people left the whole idea of radio programming behind, and they began moving to other places and planning what television is going to be like, that was pretty much the end of it. So radio only lasted from, somebody already said, from 1926, and that's about when NBC was founded, the same one that's NBC now, and to about 1952 to 1955. So what I've done for this course is to bring up all of the radio detectives that appeared, and we're going to listen to them in some of their better programs, naturally. There's a lot of good and bad programming as there is now. Here's one of them right here. The Shadow was a wonderful example of this, because The Shadow started way, way back in pulp magazines. And then The Shadow got into radio. Orson Welles brought him in, and so a lot of people remember that. And then The Shadow lasted all the way to the end of the radio system. But then when they tried to make a movie of it, it was a terrible movie. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it. So the idea here is that what we're going to do is bring on all these pros. We're going to be able to listen to about maybe 20 out of the massive amount of programming that's available. So this will be 5 sessions. It'll be at the Gateway Center between 1 and 3 p.m. And it starts on May 16th. Thank you very much.
Yes, the Shadow knows.
Yes, he does.
We always like to touch that part of ourselves where we deal with writing as a skill and a habit. And Nancy Canyon is one of our favorites in this field. We've asked her to come back again. Nancy?
Hi, everyone. Many years back, a friend and her family planned on climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And when they arrived at the base camp, fear overtook her. And while everyone was asleep that night, she decided that her family would have to make the climb without her. In the morning, it was clear to her that her decision was wrong. They roped up and began the climb. It was grueling. In the morning of the summit, she was too exhausted to go any farther. She told her family to go on without her. But then her Sherpa would not have it, so he hoisted her on his back and carried her to the summit. Tears welled in her eyes when she told me this story, and it made my eyes well too. She'd crossed a meaningful threshold. In story, the threshold crossing is a powerful turning point for character. Once a threshold is crossed, there's no going back. The character has changed. We all know that letting go of someone or something, making a career change, moving, having a travel adventure can draw on our deep reserves, our faith, our vulnerability. These are our spiritual stories. In the class, we will write our stories of change. They can be based on our religious beliefs, or they can be practical, political, poetic, and more. Each is infused with power and transformation. Here's an excerpt from a spiritual piece that I wrote called Full of Grace, which is the meaning of my name. I was alone in my art studio when I heard my name called. The voice, gentle but forceful, commanded me to listen, to pay attention. I had to still my breathing in order to completely listen. I'd heard my name called before. I'd heard it when my brother died. I'd heard it when my mother passed, Nancy. I did what people do in this type of situation. I stayed perfectly still. I listened. I named the sounds I could hear, the clicking of the gas stove, the distant whistle of the train, the occasional car passing on the road. I listened hard, not breathing, not moving, nothing. I unzipped my sleeping bag slowly so I could hear over the sound of the teeth separating in case I was called again. I got up from the cot and tiptoed to the door. I opened it. A bit of wind, waves rolling on shore. Maybe my husband had reconsidered. Maybe he'd called out to me from inside the house. Maybe he still wanted me. Nancy. It wasn't my husband. He'd made up his mind. The elephant in the room had been acknowledged. I went back to bed. Spirit had called me. Yes, it was Spirit. I suddenly knew, like I knew when my brother died, that I wasn't alone, the same as when my mother passed. I sensed his presence whenever times turned tough. When my father called, he said there had been an accident. My brother had been struck and killed by a truck. Here, then gone. Years later, my father called with bad news a second time. He said, "Your mother passed." I cried inconsolably until Spirit called Nancy. Please join me for this writing class, The Spiritual Life. Thanks.
I think you can see why we invite Nancy back all the time to help us with our writing courses. And it's a very non-threatening environment. Nothing you write is wrong. And finally, no, we have one after this. I just remembered we had to move one to the end. But it's about time, don't you think? We need to have a little humor here. And we're going to have some Clyde Hist give a little preview of his course, Humor versus Fun in Music. Clyde, come on up.
When I first heard about doing this program, I was asked to repeat the program I did, which I thought was about 3 years ago. And I found out this morning it was 7 years ago. I don't like to repeat myself, and the reason I'm using notes is because I stand in awe of anyone who can stand up extempore and do what they want to say and not have notes, because I could go on forever. But I will do my best. At any rate, I didn't want to repeat anything. However, in a talk on humor and fun in music, you're going to have some overlapping when you talk about what makes music fun. There's a difference between fun and humor. Therefore, fun versus humor in music. Now, how to go about this? The trouble with humor and fun is, of course, it's terribly subjective. What might be funny and humorous to someone might be absolutely appalling to others. I'll begin by definition. Webster, unabridged, says fun, originally to act foolishly, but also lively and gay. He funned was another use of the word. Humor, if you look that word up, you'll find there's a good bit of overlapping. However, there are many different views of humor, including the original, which meant moisture, believe it or not, and to be moist. And this, of course, comes from the fact of the humors, the four humors that are listed and have been for many years: blood, phlegm, choler, and melancholy. However, a person's disposition is another thing. Joking, merriment. That was Webster. However, the OED, which I avoided going into as much as possible, was rather concise. I couldn't believe it. The state of mind, keep, so forth, and humor him, whim, fancy, caprice, even ludicrous, funny, amusing. I decided to stick to the enjoyment aspect of this, and that's where we will be. Thank you.
Well, we're winding up now. This presenter in this course. Very interesting. It's history, but I think we can also say there's probably a little politics involved in here when you're talking about the U.S. history from the perspective of corn. We think it's an exciting title. Come tell us about it, Donna Keller.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to use notes too. So yes, I'm really excited. I've been wanting to teach this class for a long time. So if you didn't see the screen, pretend you didn't see this. Just a quick joke about humor and fun. So what has big ears but cannot hear? So, of course, corn. So corn has actually been very, very present and has been hearing and witnessing the history of the United States and the history of our relationship with other countries. And so this is going to be a journey showing those connections. So we're going to actually begin the story 9,000 years ago. But before we begin, I just want to take a moment and ask you to think just quietly to yourself everything and anything that you've had today that has had corn in it. So many of us know Michael Pollan, the author of Omnivore's Dilemma, but he uses the example of the hamburger as being made completely from oil and corn. So you could go through the whole hamburger, the bun with the high fructose corn syrup, and the meat with the corn-fed cows, the ketchup with the high fructose corn syrup, even the cheese with the starch. I mean, everything. Somehow corn has become so prevalent in our culture. So we want to know, how did that happen? And what place has corn played? So I just want to briefly trace you through 9,000 years ago. In the Mayan civilization, it was the gods that made humans out of corn. They tried to do it out of mud. They tried to do it out of grass. They tried to do it out of all these different materials, but none of them worked. And so they used corn. The gods used corn. And it worked. And we became human. And that's their creation myth. So they actually, the word Mayan actually means, I am corn walking. And part of what we're going to do is look politically, but also spiritually, like what kind of connection do we have with our food? What kind of connections did they have with their gods and their fertility goddesses? And learn about that, and learn that it was like 6,000 years ago that actually Peruvian people enjoyed popcorn. But then we're going to trace it back up north and east and go into the whole familiar story of the colonizers coming over from Europe, England, and then having the Thanksgiving dinner with the corn. And then what happens after that is they're stealing. The settlers start stealing and using armed guns to try weapons to get the corn, because it was so hard to grow anything in the soil. And then, of course, corn at that point, before that, had gone over to Europe. They'd never experienced corn over in Europe before the 1600s. And then, so we look at that story. And then we're traveling south, into the south, and we're going to look at the southern culture around corn, and the fact that actually slavery actually in very many cases existed because of corn. There was tons and tons and tons of corn that were shipped in the transatlantic slave trade to feed the slaves as they were coming over, and to feed the slaves as they were here, and then slaves grew cotton. So we're going to look at some of those songs from the south around corn. We're going to also look at the downside of corn, the pellagra that happen. It's a disease that happens when your diet is almost totally based on corn. And the Mayans knew something that we didn't practice in the 1900s about how to release the vitamins out of corn. And this is a thought that my father, who's back there, Bob Keller, wanted to ask you, is around the digestion of corn. So do we as humans digest corn? Stop! Okay, so the answer is just look at your when you go to the bathroom, and you'll see that we don't. but anyway, so so we're going to go through and then go to the Midwest, and we're going to go internationally, and we're going to experience corn all kinds of different ways. Okay, thank you, sorry.
You tried to stop her, Dale. Did you know what she was going to come up with? Oh my. I think it's going to be very interesting. Believe it or not, guys, we've reached the end of the 20 courses and 3 excursions. Thank you for your patience, but before you leave, let's thank all of the instructors for being here. Good job, and I certainly hope you found something that will interest you and you'll sign up. If not here today, go home to your computer. Thanks again. Good. Thank you.
If it hadn't been Becky, I wouldn't have been enjoyed
Lisbeth, this was all videoed. You can see it on the website.